Thank you. Thank you guys for coming.
Positive.
All right, so we'll go ahead and move on, hearing no comments from the public. Under water matters, I think we're going to wait until our water attorney gets here. He's going to be here in person today, so that gets us down to the operations section. Yeah, there's an operations report. That was enclosed in the packet. And Stephen, can you give us some of the highlights maybe? And while we're doing that, I'm going to hand these minutes out for some.
Well, I think the highlights are covered under the operations in the agenda. The operations report is set up for monitoring of maintenance, gallons that we pump out of our water treatment facilities, gallons that we treat at our wastewater treatment facility. If we have any complaints, how those were addressed. So various items that we come across on a monthly and recurring basis. If we have any sanitary sewer overflows, we list those. We keep track of fire hydrant maintenance, water main repairs, water leaks, any new infrastructure that's been installed. So a lot of status and kind of measuring of progress. And again, water pumped, water treated, work that we've done on the collection system. Also, you'll see at the wastewater, for the Aspen wastewater treatment facility, there's a third column there that it has compliant. So if we have any exceedances, that's where we would list them, and then I'll describe to you what those problems are. For the last 20 months or so, the plant has not had any exceedances and been running quite well. Great. And below that, you'll see your total ammonia. There's a discharge limit for ammonia. So we list the limit there per month, and you can see that it changes. And then we list the result that we get from our treatment process.
Bless you.
Parvin's still with us.
And the final page has the expenses. The operations gets $5,000 per month to deal with various issues that come up. Could be repairs, could be emergency repairs, administration.
Well, the 5,000 covers those things that aren't emergencies, they're normal operating expenses.
Right, right. So that's listed here at the back for you to review. You can see how those dollars are being spent. There's a purchase order book that is left in that file room there that has the approval for the expenditure and what it was for and where it was used, if you'd like to get that detail. So that kind of covers the manager's report. Do you have the questions?
I have a question, Ms. Treasurer. Thank you, Paul. Well, so where do these show up? This is not separated out of the budget. It's somewhere in the financials, and is it scattered or is it in one place?
No, it's scattered throughout various budgetary line items.
But reported on so you can see what the particulars are line by line.
Right.
Yeah. Stephen, can you speak a little bit about the lagoon decommissioning? Where are we with that? Are we approaching the end of that?
Well, right now we're waiting for funding. At this point, it's been completely decommissioned. The health department has authorized the decommissioning and the termination of the permit. So we now have one treatment plant, and that's the Aspen wastewater treatment plant. So what we have out there at Mobile Home Estates is a biosolid storage. That needs to be taken care of in some way. Typically you haul that off and it gets land applied, or it gets put into a landfill that is lined and can actually receive that type of product. So the cost for that is between $25,000 and $30,000. And until we free up those types of resources, the product is being stored in one of the old lagoons out at the mobile home estates. So that's our status at this point.
By the way, I submitted a grant application for that project as well. And I asked for $50,000 from the state to decommission that facility, but we'll see. I mean, they're still in the review process for those grants, so.
So I
And
noticed.
what's the timing on?
It's
On
still
that
gonna be,
grant cycle?
it's like a couple more months before they make a decision.
So I noticed there was a flood out at Kyle's restaurant. What was happening there?
There was a leak, right?
Water leak, yeah.
Water leak and that pipe again.
The service line burst,
Okay.
very common.
What was his name, Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah, good guy.
Yeah, he's
He
good.
came and warned us that the water's gonna be shut off. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
And how about down from the professional building as you're going to the information center? We had another,
Yep, another main line break, and
in that same location, huh?
well, actually it was up from
Was
the
up
other
from the
one
other
about 500 feet.
Right,
Now the
right.
good news is that we installed a valve there,
good.
another gate valve. So what we're hoping is eventually the breaks will actually start happening below the gate valve, and that way we'll be able to secure the water at that location, and then we won't have any customers out of water. Right now, what has happened the last two times is the main break is between the last valve and the valve right at the intersection of Baca Grande Way and Camino Baca Grande. So we have, a dozen or so customers that are out of water. So we're hoping for the best there. Those valves are, with all of the various equipment, they're $1,000 each. So we have one of those in reserve. And as soon as we can afford to, I'll get another one.
Great.
But they're pretty expensive piece of equipment.
Good.
Could I ask you to educate me about the total ammonia in terms of limit?
Sure.
You know, as I look down at these figures, quite honestly, what?
So on the far left, we have the month,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next column to the right, we have the actual limit.
Yeah.
And those are milligrams per liter, so very small, minute amount. Most of the ammonia that we deal with comes from urine.
Okay.
That's pretty much where it comes
Sure.
from.
Okay.
And it is toxic to fish and aquatic life. So the health department has a limit that they've implemented per month.
Right.
And so they'll allow us to discharge a higher amount when it's colder. And as it warms up, then it goes down. But so if you then go to the third column to the right, you can see that we've been in compliance all year.
Right.
The far column to the right, you can see what our actual limit is, or what our result is.
Thank
And so
you
you can see that
very
that's
much.
0.2,
Yeah.
so that's under 1.
Thank you.
It's an
That
incredible
helps me
treatment.
understand.
And we
Yeah.
really are starting to get a much better treatment than we ever have. And so that's
Thank
an
you.
awesome result.
Thank you very much. That helps.
And how often do we test that to get the result?
Monthly.
So
What you
at a
do-
random time or? is-
Well, we try to do it mostly at the beginning of the month. And the
So
reason
it's
is
consistent?
that, the reason is that if you blow the limit and you have a violation, you have an opportunity to make adjustments in the plant and average that exceedance down. So we always do that testing at the beginning of the month, whenever possible. Now, this particular month has been a little odd. We had one operator who was on vacation. We had some projects happening at the Aspen treatment plant, so we still have to do those tests for May, and those will take place sometime next week.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Okay.
So what's this, it says administration, it says late charges.
That's just more information for you, and
So
it's the
people who are
number
late
of
paying
people
their
who are
bills.
paying
Oh,
their
okay, it's
bills
the
late.
customers who are
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then customer complaints, and it says resolved.
Yeah, so if we have a customer complaint, then we track it. We have a file who complained. We don't let, that's not public information, but
Is it
if
for
we
the
do,
board?
absolutely. If we do have complaints, then we would list them, and then we would see if we can resolve them. And if we can, then we let you know that they're resolved.
Gotcha.
Or if they're not resolved, then we let you know that as well.
Curious question. Does these packets and the meeting amount to the orientation for the new board members, or is there other training?
No, what we're gonna talk about later in the meeting is doing a separate orientation with the directors to kind of give some background and more detailed information and walk through with more time and specificity, kind of all of this stuff to get you guys oriented, because it's a lot of material to absorb.
Yes.
And it's, even after doing a, day of orientation, it's gonna take some time to kind of get up to speed, but that'll allow you guys to kind of ask some questions. We can go through financials and all that kind of stuff. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more in some detail later in the meeting, but this we're kind of providing some background information to get through the meeting today with the intent of providing even further detail for you guys at a later date. So.
Do we need to do leak detection?
Yeah, shall I carry on?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so under operations, item B, discuss status of corrosion control analysis. So we have no new action. We have submitted the reports that were required of us, and we're in the process of waiting for some design work from our engineer, and once that's submitted to CDPHE, then that treatment process hopefully will be approved, and then we'll be able to implement it. And so we're in compliance at this point with their action item list, and if you'd like to see that at some point, then we can go over what those deliverables are, what the plan is, and all the various steps. Do you have any?
Yeah, I do have additional information. Ron McLaughlin completed his design, and he submitted it yesterday. So he submitted to the state for review. So the design is complete for the soda ash implementation. So now, and he also submitted comments to his original corrosion control plan back to the state. So now we're in a position to await the state's approval of the design. Once we have that, we can execute the implementation of a soda ash corrosion control treatment process. So that's the status.
And that's control of pH.
Right, right. The purpose of soda ash is to control pH.
Are you talking about that as a replacement for the OPP?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So that's where we are with corrosion.
So Ron, I'm thinking I remember from last month, on that side of the room, there were some questions and corrections that Ron was asked to make in the plan, and you're saying those have been made? And the state hasn't yet approved his plan, is that?
Well, there's two parts to the process. One is we have to come up with an optimal corrosion control process. And we asked the state if we could, on a parallel track, submit for a change in the drinking water plan so that we could immediately, or as soon as approved by the state, go forward with the soda ash treatment. The risk we run is the soda ash may not ultimately be deemed by the state the optimal plan, and we may have to change again. But in the meantime, this process of determining the optimal corrosion control treatment will take months. So rather than wait for that process to play out, and probably 6 months, or who knows, have to gather a lot of data over time and record it and report it to the state. But so that we wouldn't suffer that delay, we did the parallel track. So that'll allow us to move off of the OPP and onto soda ash, which I think is probably a preferred treatment.
And how, this is the question I've had for a really long time, and it finally crystallized this week. how, if we're treating for pH, do we, how can we test to know whether we really need it or not, whether we actually do have a corrosion problem?
That will be through the lead and copper testing.
Right, this whole process.
Well,
Okay,
so it'll be through the lead and copper testing, but of what? Of water that's of water that's treated already?
Yes.
Well,
It doesn't.
then how do we know? It's like if we're testing water that's treated, how do we know what we need? How can we test?
So I think if I can put it one way, if we run fresh water through with no treatment, and then we can test if there is lead and copper coming through. If we treat the water and there's no lead and copper coming through, we're saying there's no lead and copper because we're treating it. But what happens if there's no lead and copper anyway? We don't know that.
We don't have
Well,
a
We
control.
do know that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do know that there is lead and copper without treatment, and that's what kicked